Amazon van you might think of. It was an Amazon driver who was in an enterprise rent-a-van to make the deliveries. He's sort of a contractor for Amazon, but he was held up at gunpoint by Jalen Jackson. Jackson then steals that van with the Amazon packages. He gets into a chase with Cleveland Heights police. He ends up getting on I-90. It's at night. Gets on I-90, driving the wrong way down the highway, and he crashes with an oncoming car. First of all, there were no headlights on. Jalen Jackson did not turn on the headlights or turned off the headlights on that rent-a-van and was driving the wrong way. And when he crashed into Dr. Curtis Burchell, who was driving on I-90. We have video of the aftermath, and it is horrific. We also have video of the crash itself. When it comes up, pay attention to the lanes on the right-hand side, and you see that Jalen Jackson behind the wheel of that van tries to, maybe at the last second, steer away from the oncoming traffic. It looks like that's a Lincoln that Dr. Burchell was driving. He tries to steer away from. The doctor sees him at a last second right here, and it was a deadly crash. We're going to take you live now to the sentencing. He is facing charges for involuntary manslaughter, aggravated robbery, discharge of a firearm on or near a premise, failure to comply with police. Having a weapon under disability means he was a felon. He also pleaded guilty to two unrelated charges, two unrelated cases. So he's going to be sentenced on all three cases. Let's take you live.
All right. We're here for sentencing because case number 685374, defendant had previously pled guilty to receiving stolen property of a motor vehicle, violation of Revised Code 2913.51, a felony of the fourth degree, as charged in count 1 of that indictment. We're also here on case number 683231, where a defendant had previously pled guilty to burglary, a felony of the second degree, is charged in count 1 of the indictment in violation of Revised Code 2911.12A2. And we're also here on the third case, case number 697745, where the defendant had previously pled guilty to, as amended, involuntary manslaughter in violation of Revised Code 2903.04A, a felony of the first degree, with a 1-year firearm specification in violation of 2941.141, and a forfeiture specification pursuant to 2941.1417 as amended in count 1 of the indictment. Also, the defendant had pled guilty to aggravated robbery, an amended indictment in violation of 2911.01A1, a felony of the first degree, with a 3-year firearm specification pursuant to 2941.145, and a forfeiture specification pursuant to 2941.1417 as amended in count 3 of the indictment. Also, the defendant had pled guilty to discharge of a firearm on or near prohibited premises, a felony of the third degree, in violation of Revised Code 2923.162A3. As I said, a felony of the third degree with forfeiture specification 2941.1417 is amended in count 8 of the indictment. Also, the defendant had pled guilty to failure to comply with order signal of police officer pursuant to Revised Code 2921.331B, a felony of the third degree, with a 3-year firearm specification pursuant to 2941.145. Also, with the same forfeiture specification pursuant to 2941.1417 as it was amended in count 9 of the indictment. Also, the defendant pled guilty to having weapons while under disability pursuant to revised code 2923.13A2, a felony of the third degree with forfeiture specifications pursuant to 2941.1417 as amended in count 10 of the indictment. They also, pursuant to the record, there was an agreement that all counts are not allied offenses, and there was an agreement for the defendant to forfeit to the Cleveland Heights Police Department the firearm, a High Point CP, serial number P1552415. The defendant was referred for a pre-sentence investigation report, and the court has a copy and has receipt of that and has reviewed it. Have you had a chance to review it? Which of you is going to speak?
Yes, Your Honor. We have had an opportunity to review the pre-sentence investigation report, find it to be accurate.
You have found it? You have reviewed it, you said?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Ms. Linick?
Yes, the state has reviewed that as well, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. Are you ready to go for sentencing, Mr. Shaughnessy?
We're prepared to go forward, Your Honor.
All right. I'll let the state proceed first.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court, good morning. Before this court, in the cases just indicated, there's also an agreement years of incarceration as the sentence that we are suggesting. Your Honor, the state will be requesting the high end of that, the 34 years on 697-745, any time to be given on the other two cases, 685-374 and 683-231, to be run concurrent for a total sentence of 34 years. The state will, at this time, place on the record the reasons for that request and recommendation. In viewing the purposes and principles of felony sentencing, Your Honor, the state believes that this sentence is appropriate to protect the public from future crime from Mr. Jackson, as well as to punish him for the offenses that he committed. I believe it will promote an effective rehabilitation, and these are using the minimum sanctions to determine how to accomplish this. There is a need for incapacitation in this case, and not just incapacitation for the higher level based on the seriousness of the crimes that he committed, and that the sentence that the state is suggesting would be commensurate with and not demeaning to the seriousness of his conduct and the impact on the victims in these cases. Your Honor, looking at the factors under 2929.12b, that the victim suffered serious physical, psychological, or economic harm in these cases. I don't believe that there is any more serious harm than the loss of life. In all categories, physical, psychological, and economic, the ripple effects that this has on a family, on a community, but of course on the victim who lost his life. There was also the victim of the aggravated robbery. The state will move through the facts momentarily, who suffered not just physical harm, but also psychological harm, serious psychological harm. Just to give the court a brief overview of the series of events starting from March of 2022 through December of 23, which are the reasons why Mr. Jackson is before this court. In case 685-374, it actually begins on March 24th of 2022, when Ms. Anacia Dienez, age 24, reported that her 2006 Chevy Impala was stolen when she went out to work. She found it missing. 2 weeks prior, her car had been taken from her at gunpoint by a light-skinned male in front of her residence, excuse me, in Cleveland near West 73rd and Madison. Her spare key was taken at that time. The car was ultimately recovered and then taken again between about at approximately 1800 hours on March 24th and 10 a.m. on March 25th. On April 3rd, the vehicle was located parked at Great Northern Mall. Police put stop sticks in front of the tires and waited. Jalen Jackson and two other males approached the vehicle, and Mr. Jackson used a key to unlock the door to get in the driver's seat. When units approached the Impala, all occupants ran. The two passenger males were apprehended while Mr. Jackson eluded police at that time on a foot pursuit into and through Great Northern Mall, and a warrant was issued for him at that time. Moving on then, that was April 3rd. April 9th of 2023, a Mr. John Beck Jr., and this is now in case 683231. John Beck Jr., age 25, had his apartment burglarized while he was out. Multiple items and money were taken. His apartment is located across the street from the Michael Zone Rec Center, which is roughly an 8-minute walk or a 2-minute car ride from where Ms. Dienez's 2006 Impala was taken from her at gunpoint the year prior. That is the vehicle in question in the case 685374. Blood at the point of entry, a broken window, was sent to BCI and matched to the defendant, Jalen Jackson. Moving on then, Your Honor, to case 697745. On December 6th of 2023, at approximately 7 p.m., victim by the name of Mike Mathis, no relation to Detective Mike Mathis, Mathis spelled M-A-T-H-E-S, age 55, had just delivered an Amazon package on Summit Park Road in Cleveland Heights between Noble and Cleveland Heights Boulevard. He was getting back in the white cargo van he was using to make those deliveries when Jalen Jackson, 23 at the time, put the barrel of his Hi-Point 9mm into Mr. Mathis's back and told him to get down on the ground, and if he moved, he would blow his brains out. Mr. Mathis scrambled to get out of the van, and in the process of doing so, fell and scraped up his hand. The van was spotted by Cleveland Heights Police Department on Helmsdale near Grayton, and observed again by Officer Anderson with no headlights on Grayton, where he went to make a U-turn and initiate a traffic stop, at which time he heard shots fired and called that out over radio traffic while activating his lights and sirens and pursuing. Jackson fled north on Taylor Road, eastbound on Euclid Avenue, north on Coit, west on Woodworth, north on Coit again, west on Kirby, north on Edie, and went for the first time onto 90 West from Edie Road. Through Cleveland Heights, he went on 90 eastbound through downtown into the near west side, exiting at Lorraine Avenue. He proceeded through more residential and commercial areas before driving northbound on West 44th from Clark, before turning onto North Marginal across West 41st and onto the westbound exit ramp from 90, where he exited on West 7th. The pursuit continued. The Cleveland Police Department helicopter was sent up. Speeds were recorded of reaching up to 100 miles per hour throughout various times in the pursuit. Mr. Jackson then drove the van he was in westbound into the eastbound lanes on I-90 with Cleveland Heights officers pursuing with lights and sirens. Just before 8 p.m., Mr. Jackson traveled straight down the far left lane into oncoming traffic, lane 1, at approximately 60 miles an hour, and crashed his van head-on into the white sedan being driven by Dr. Curtis Birchall, age 70. The injuries to Mr. Birchall were profound, and he was pronounced dead on scene. Mr. Jackson, who exited the vehicle and tried to flee on foot at that time, suffered a broken ankle. A spent 9mm shell casing was located at 1080 Grayton Road, and when examined by the firearm and tool mark analysts at the Regional Forensic Lab, it did match the 9mm Hi-Point recovered from Mr. Jackson after the crash. His hands were also swabbed and revealed gunshot residue. Your Honor, again, the state is arguing that this is the most serious form of these offenses and does warrant maximum consecutive sentences. I can angle the screen, or I don't know, Your Honor, if you're able
I
to
can see fine.
I'm going to play what's been marked as State's Exhibit 1 for the purposes of this hearing and will be offered by the state as such, going approximately to 55 seconds of playtime in. And Your Honor, I direct your attention to this top of the screen here. This is the van that Mr. Jackson was driving directly in the center lane, not even attempting to get over. Hit Dr. Birchall head on. This is Dr. Virtual's vehicle. This is the van driven by the defendant. After the crash, he attempts to flee even then, on foot, from officers who then pursue him on foot, where he's ultimately apprehended, and they attempt to render aid to Mr. Birchall, Dr. Birchall. However, he was pronounced deceased on scene.
Can you repeat that again?
Certainly.
Now that I know what I'm looking at?
Certainly, Your Honor. There are no headlights on that vehicle. It is directly in the center of that far left lane. There is a median that he could have been over more into. He was directly in that left lane, Your Honor, with no headlights on going into oncoming traffic on I-90. To go back to the psychological harm, Your Honor, to not only the individuals involved, Mr. Birchall's, Dr. Birchall's family, and anyone else who's affected by this. Mr. Mathis did provide a statement. He only received a minor cut to his left hand. This was, again, the Amazon delivery employee. He received a minor cut on his left hand and bruising on his right knee that did not require any medical treatment. However, he did undergo counseling as a result of being robbed at gunpoint, with the van taken from him. He said he was unable, quote, "I was unable to return to work right away and lost pay because of this crime. I now have panic attacks when it gets dark and sometimes unable to finish my routes because of it. I no longer leave my house when it gets nighttime because of the fear it's no longer safe. I lose sleep every night because of the incident replaying in my dreams." Moving on, Your Honor, to 292912D, that the recidivism is more likely in this case. Jalen Jackson does have a history of juvenile delinquency that was indicated and outlined in the pre-sentence investigative report, but it does bear noting, Your Honor, that the most concerning case in question is DL 17117206, that I believe was reindicted as DL 181000767, under which Jalen Jackson was adjudicated delinquent on 28 counts. 8 counts of aggravated robbery, 8 counts of kidnapping, 4 of felonious assault, 5 of grand theft, and 1 of each theft, attempted grand theft, and discharge of a firearm. In those cases, there was a rash of carjackings, aggravated robberies that occurred within a very short window of time, for which he received juvie life. He was admitted to the Ohio Department of Youth Services on May 11th, 2018, and stayed until his 21st birthday, August of 2021. So August 2021, Your Honor, and the first incident in the 3 cases before this court for sentencing began on April 3rd of 2023. And again, Your Honor, juvie life, as it's termed, is the most serious offense or serious punishment that a juvenile can receive. And even that did not deter him for the conduct that brings us to court today. Again, another factor under 292912D. He did not respond favorably to those sanctions that were imposed on him by the juvenile court system. Your Honor, as far as consecutive sentences, again, that is what the state's asking for. 2 or more of the multiple offenses committed were a single course of conduct, and the harm was so great and unusual that a single term does not adequately reflect the seriousness of this conduct. And we believe that his criminal history shows that consecutive terms are necessary to protect the public. In his pre-sentence investigative report, he is marked as moderate risk level for recidivism. The state is asking the court to impose a term of the maximum sentence, so without any Reagan-Tokes time, which the state would offer the involuntary manslaughter be the appropriate count to add the Reagan-Tokes tail, but the 11 years on the involuntary manslaughter, 11 years on the aggravated robbery with the 3-year firearm specification time, 36 months on discharge of a firearm on or near prohibited premises, 36 months on the failure to comply with the 3-year firearm specification, and 36 months on having weapons under disability, the 2 3-year firearm specifications in the failure to comply, and the aggravated robbery to be run consecutive to one another, and the 1-year firearm specification in the involuntary manslaughter count to be run concurrent for a total of 34 years. And then again, Your Honor, that's without the Reagan-Tokes tail, which would be added. Thank you, Your Honor.
Anything in mitigation? Mr. Sharonson, now before you go, I just will note for the record, I do have in my possession 2 letters, which I know the prosecutors indicated they've had a chance to read or review. One is from the mother. I think it's Akia Reed. And the second one is from James Reed, who is the little brother of the defendant. So I know both sides have had a chance to review it, and the state has read these letters, or the court has read these letters, and we'll take that into account for mitigation. Anything else?
Thank you, Your Honor. If it will please the court, I would just like to begin by stating that anything I'm about to say is in no way meant to demean the seriousness of what occurred here. We understand what a tragedy this was, and again, nothing we're about to say on behalf of Jalen is in any way meant to demean the seriousness of what happened. Judge, as you've indicated, and I know you've read the pre-sentence investigation report, I know that you're well aware of the facts and circumstances and background of this young man and of these offenses. Judge Jalen understands the seriousness of his conduct. He understands the seriousness of the consequences of his conduct, and he has admitted his full guilt and accepted responsibility by entering these pleas. On his behalf, Your Honor, I would say, in addition to those letters, he has strong family support, evidenced by all of the folks that are sitting behind him here, all relatives and friends who are here even in this time to support him. Judge, looking at his background, I think some things are of note. He did begin abusing drugs, mainly marijuana. It looks like about an ounce a day starting at the age of 15. I think we're all aware of what kind of effects that can have on, and again, it's not an excuse, but what kind of effect that can have on his development. Judge, I think in these cases, the most important person to speak is going to be Jalen, and I know in a few moments he would like to express his remorse to the family, to the court, and to the community. Before he does that, though, a couple of things I think need to be said. We would not object to consecutive sentences, Your Honor, as I indicated earlier. We've gotten the benefit of not having a life sentence involved here through negotiations with the state of Ohio, and the only place to get to the agreed range of 26 to 34 was by agreeing consecutive sentences. So we do concede that. Judge, I'm going to ask you to consider the 26-year sentence. This young man is 24 years old. If you give him a 26-year sentence with the Reagan-Tokes, he's going to be subject to incarceration for 26 to 31 and a half years. At the conclusion of that sentence, he will be given 5 years of post-release control. So basically, if you give him a 26-year sentence, he's under the control of the Bureau of Department of Corrections for the next 36 and a half years. He's 24 years old. Take him past his 60th birthday. Judge, we'd ask you to consider that would be an appropriate sentence. It's within the range that the state negotiated. At this time, I know Jalen would like to address the victims' families, all of the victims in these cases, this court, and the community.
All right.
All right, Mr. Jackson, you don't have to say anything, but you're permitted to. Do you wish to address the court?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just speak up loud.
Yeah, I say yes, sir.
Yeah, no, I heard you, but I mean, the court reporter has to take down what you say, so I'm asking that you just speak loudly. Go ahead.
I just apologize for what I did. I didn't mean to harm. I didn't mean to put harm to nobody. I messed up. It was an accident. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, thank you, sir. Okay, so before imposing sentence, the court notes for the record that it is considered the record. Oh wait, did you also want to hand to me some certificates, I believe?
Your Honor, I did show you some certificates prior to coming out here for sentencing, and that was just in an effort to show the court that Mr. Jackson has used his time in the county jail wisely. He's completed a number of programs, and I think that shows that he is subject to being rehabilitated in the future.
All right, just because you mentioned that sidebar that you showed the prosecutor too. You had a chance to review these, right, Ms. Linick?
I do have an opportunity to
All right.
review them, Your Honor. There is one other thing the state would like to put on the record when it's appropriate, Your Honor.
Sure. So it's just these are certificates of courses that he's completed while in the county jail for anger management, for introduction to legal studies, criminal process, the basics is another course. How can I stop my anger course? In the courtroom course. House of Healing, the basics course. Math addition, subtraction course. Veterans Behind Bars course. Fentanyl course. And how to reverse opiate overdose course. So the court will note those, and we'll make these a part of the record, these courses. I'll just keep it in. Are you introducing that the video is part of the sentencing or no?
I can't offer it for the record, Your Honor.
I'm not asking you to do it. You referenced it. I'm just asking if you are.
I will submit that segment as part of the record, Your Honor.
All right, then I'll put all of these, well, they'll just stay in the court file, I guess, these certificates and the letters. I'm sorry, did you want to indicate anything else, Ms. Linick?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. At this time, A.K. Bernia does have some information to provide the court with regards to restitution request.
Yes, Your Honor. In case 685-374, this is the receiving stolen property case. I did receive an email from the victim on that matter, Ms. Alicia Denz, who provided a statement that I'd like to read. Just the consequences of this crime have extended beyond just the loss of my vehicle. The psychological toll has been significant as I have struggled with anxiety and an overwhelming sense of insecurity. I often find myself worrying about my personal safety and simple daily tasks such as driving and have become a source of stress. I now feel a sense of caution and mistrust that I did not experience before. I also had to since move out of my beloved home due to the fear he caused. Additionally, Your Honor, Ms. Denz has provided a $500 insurance deductible information for that vehicle that was stolen. And then in case 683-231, the burglary case, the state did make contact with the victim on that matter, John Beck, at the beginning of the case, who has indicated a total restitution amount of $1,070 being sought after the items that were stolen were a PlayStation 5 valued at $550, a pair of shoes valued at $500, and then a bed comforter which was valued at $20, giving us to that $1,070 amount in restitution being requested in that case.
All right. All right, so we already took the plea. So I'm asking the defense counsel, are you consenting or objecting? Do we need to have a restitution hearing? I'm trying to, because this was not part of the plea, right?
That is correct, Your Honor.
Right, so these aren't here. I mean, they do realize he's going to prison for a long time, doesn't he?
Yes, Your Honor, both victims have understood that point.
All right, well, I'll just ask Mr. Shaughnessy what his position on those are.
I understand what the court said is that there's going to be a minimum 26 or a maximum 34-year sentence. We did not negotiate that first, and I was not given that information until this morning.
Sure. All right. Listen, I understand that without them being present, we'd have to have a restitution hearing, So I appreciate the prosecution bringing that to the court's attention. Again, before imposing sentence, the court notes for the record that it is considered the record, the oral statements made here today, the pre-sentence investigative report, the certificates of completion, the letters from the defendant's family. We also considered some of the statements from the victims, and we're also considering the prior juvenile record of the defendant. The court must and has formulated its decision based upon the overriding principles and purposes of felony sentencing, namely to protect the public from future crime by the defendant or others, and to punish the offender using the minimum sanctions that the court determines accomplish those purposes without imposing an unnecessary burden on state or local government resources. To achieve these purposes, the court has considered the need for incapacitation, deterrence, rehabilitation, also must consider the seriousness and recidivism factors relevant to the offender and the offense. The court also has to ensure the sentence being imposed does not demean the seriousness of the crime and the impact it has on the victims and the community, and that is consistent with other similar offenses committed by like offenders. So with that in mind, also, the court is going to consider that part of the agreed sentence necessitates consecutive sentences, as the defense counsel conceded. However, the court will still, in determining that, considering these cases, the court determines that consecutive sentences will be necessary to punish the offender and to protect the public from future crime, and that it is not disproportionate to the seriousness of the conduct and the danger posed by the defendant, and one or more of the offenses were committed while the offender was awaiting, and two or more offenses of these offenses were part of one or more courses of conduct, and the harm caused is so great and unusual that a single prison term would not adequately reflect the seriousness of the conduct, and his criminal history demonstrates that consecutive sentences are necessary to protect the public. So as part of these two, the defendant pled to a failure to comply. That was a felony of the 3rd degree. So with that, carries a mandatory driver's license suspension anywhere from 3 years to life, and the court's going to impose a lifetime suspension on the driver's license. That's with respect to the failure to comply in case number 697745. Count 9. So we're going to go through these cases one by one. In case number 685374, defendant is sentenced to 12 months or 1 year on count 1 of the indictment for receiving stolen property, motor vehicle felony of the 4th degree. And that time will be run concurrent in that case to all the other cases. In case number 683231, defendant pled guilty to burglary of felony of the 2nd degree as charged in count 1. With this one, this is subject to something called Reagan-Tokes. So after I sentence you to since this is subject to indefinite sentence, once I determine the sentence for this case and this count, automatically by statute, the indefinite portion will be 50% more than what I sentenced. So I'm going to sentence you 2 years to the burglary as charged in count 1 of the indictment. So you will serve a term of anywhere from 2 to 3 years, and I'll explain that indefinite sentence when I go over that in the next case, the ramifications. So, but the sentence in this case will be run concurrent with all the other cases and all the other counts. So concurrent with case ending in 74 and concurrent in case ending in 45. So you're sentenced to 2 to 3 years on that one. Case number 697745. All right. Well, actually, let's go back here. Case ending in 74, where I sentenced you to 1 year. You're going to be, we'll just advise you, we'll go over the post-release control at the end. So we'll go back to case ending in 45. Reagan-Tokes can only apply to one count here. The state elects and the court agrees to apply it to count 1 in the indictment. So, with regard to count 1, voluntary manslaughter, the court will impose a sentence of 11 years. And since that is since the court has imposed that sentence, the indefinite sentence is half of that, or an additional 5.5 years. So it'll be 11 to 16.5 years on count 1. Now, let's go over the Reagan-Tokes, the indefinite sentence that applies here and also to the case with the burglary. So, the minimum term, which for the burglary was 2 years, or for this case is 11 years, so it's 2 to 3 or 11 to 16.5. There is a rebuttable presumption that you shall be released from the service of that sentence at the expiration of your minimum or presumptive early release date, whichever is earlier. The Department of Corrections may rebut that presumption if at a hearing held pursuant to Revised Code 2967.271, the Department of Corrections makes specified determinations regarding your conduct while confined, the offender's threat to society, the offender's restricting housing, if any, while confined, and the offender's security classification. And if the Department of Corrections at the hearing makes the specified determinations and rebuts the presumption, they may maintain the offender's incarceration after the expiration of that minimum term or after that presumptive early release date for the length of time the Department of Corrections determines to be reasonable, subject to the limitations specified in Revised Code Section 2967.271. The Department may make the specified determinations and maintain the offender's incarceration under the provisions described in Division B2C1 and 2 of this section more than one time, subject to the limitations specified in Revised Code 2967.271. If the offender has not been released prior to the expiration of his maximum prison term imposed as part of the sentence, the offender must be released upon the expiration of that term. So, back to the sentencing in this case, which would be 45, with respect to count 3 of the indictment. The court is going to impose a sentence of 11 years. That brings us up to your base sentence of 22 years to 27.5. With respect to count 8 in the indictment, we're going to impose a sentence of 24 months or 2 years, and that will be, that'll be 2 years. So counts 1 and count 3 of the indictment, according to my previous findings, would be run consecutive to each other so far for 22 to 27.5 years. However, wait a minute. Let me go back to that. I imposed a sentence of 11 years. However, there is a 3-year firearm specification within there. So we're going to do this. It's a little confusing. So Count 1 of the indictment, I sentenced you from 11 to 16 and a half years, but there's a 1-year firearms specification. And we're going to run that concurrent with the other firearms specification. So count 1 is 11 to 16 and a half years. Count 3, I sentenced you to 11 years on there, but I also must sentence you to the 3-year firearm specification. So that would bring you from 22 to 27 and a half. However, there's a 3-year firearm specification that must be run prior and consecutive to any other time. So now we're up to 25 to 30 and a half years. Then count 8 in the indictment, I said I would sentence you to 24 months, 2 years. That will be run concurrent with all the other counts in this case. With respect to failure to comply with order signal of police officer, where you pled guilty to, as amended in count 9 in the indictment, I'm going to sentence you to a term of 24 months or 2 years in that count, plus the 3-year firearm specification. So that would bring up and again, that 3-year firearm specification must be run. I'm going to run it consecutive to the other 3-year firearm specification for a total of 6 years of firearm specifications that must be run prior and consecutive to the 22 years I already sentenced you on 22. Okay, this would bring you to 24 years. So if I sentence you on this count to 2 years for failure to comply, I'm going to find that must be consecutive to all the other counts on this case. So your total sentence would be 24 years for the sentences plus 6 years of the gun specs. So a term of 30 years to 35 and a half years. And we're going to order the forfeiture of the weapon. And with respect to count 10 in the indictment, we're going to sentence you to 2 years. That will be run concurrent with all other counts. So this is within the range of the agreed upon recommended sentence. Defendant will be sentenced to a term of anywhere from 30 to 35 and a half years at forfeiture of the weapon. I'm going to waive all fines and costs because the defendant needs to, as I like to say, buy toothpaste in prison. Is the state anything else we need to indicate, or do you think the court, it's complicated, but...
I think the court has complied, and I believe everything is accurate, Your Honor.
And Mr. Shaughnessy?
I would concur.
All right, now, also, so with that, there's still other things we need to go over. Upon completion of your prison term, you will be subject to a mandatory term of post-release control, being on parole, and that'll be for a period of time of anywhere from 2 to 5 years, as the term, because of what you pled guilty to. It's a mandatory minimum of 2 up to a maximum of 5 years. So when this is imposed following release from prison, if you violate the conditions of that supervision, the parole board may impose a prison term as part of the sentence of up to 1/2 of your stated prison term. If you're on post-release control and you're convicted of a new felony in addition to that sentence, the judge may add an additional consecutive prison term of 1 year or whatever time remains on your post-release control term, whichever is greater as a maximum. And while you're on post-release control, if you fail to report to your parole officer, you also could be charged with a crime called escape. That's a felony. We did discuss jail credit, and you are entitled to that. As of today, you have 504 days of jail time credit that will be applied. And any day from now until you're delivered to the institution. This is a sad case. It is sad for the victim that was involved and for the community. It is sad for the defendant. You know, I'm just reminding, this isn't a shooting homicide, but I'm aware the Cleveland City Council declaring this an epidemic, the gun violence in the community in Cleveland through Blaine Griffin and Councilman Starr, and this is just another example of it, where there are no winners. You are a young man, and the court does appreciate that you pled guilty to this, and that you did so, that you took responsibility in a timely manner. So you do get some credit for that, but with your record within that agreed upon range, that's ultimately how I arrived at that sentence. So waive all fines and fees. Since he's going to be in, I know the prosecution asked for restitution. The court's going to decline to order that now without a restitution hearing. Sheriff ordered transport. It's so ordered. We're in recess.
Dan DeRose with 19 News. As we get the sentence there for Jalen Jackson, 30 years is what it ends up being. Reagan Tokes, depending on his behavior in prison, could be up to 35 and a half years. But as you heard the judge say and the prosecution bringing to light, this is a young man who was involved in multiple carjackings as a juvenile, to the point he was given juvenile life. I'm going to be honest, in my career here, I've been in Cleveland almost 20 years now, I have never heard of somebody being given juvenile life, meaning he was required to be locked up until he was 21 years old. And he was released, and then he goes and does this. The video was shown in court, horrific. He steals an Amazon driver's van that was just simply making deliveries, trying to do his job. He then gets into a chase with police, gets on I-90 the wrong way multiple times, but the one time too many that he got on I-90 West, he hit and killed Dr. Curtis Burchell. He was 70 years old, and he was pronounced dead right there on I-90. We'll have a complete wrap-up of this sentencing and all of the day's news coming up at noon on Channel 19, and then, of course, at 3 when we start 3.5 hours of news and First Alert weather on Channel 19. Until then, I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News. Have a good afternoon.
19 News is everywhere. Download our CTV apps and follow us on social media at Cleveland 19 News.